Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to another episode of the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Knight, joined on this episode, June edition, inaugural June edition of Tuesday Takes here with Tre'Shon Diaz. He's at Trey3Sean on Twitter and Tre'Shon.io on Blue Sky. Tre'Shon, it's fully summer. In New York, it's still in the 70s. I imagine where you are, it's also pleasant. I know there were some 90-degree days down south recently, so summer has really kicked off there. We're still enjoying the fruits of our more, temperate climates where we are at, but summer's here. How are you doing? Did you have a good Memorial Day weekend, all that stuff?
Yeah. Definitely not dealing with any of those 90-degree days yet. Sorry to our friends that are. No, it's really the humidity that gets you too. It's not even just the heat, but I'm doing well.
Okay.
If anybody's worried about me, don't be worried. Doing great.
Living that best life.
Right.
Here in the it was 50. The high yesterday in Syracuse was like 52, which that is unusual. Like that's unusually cold, but still, it's like it's actually possible up here. Where I think if it was 52 in like Florida today, they'd probably start wondering if the world was about to end or something like that at this time of year. So, T's and P's for everyone down south dealing with the heat and the humidity at this point. But, guys, we are back. We are going to be talking, obviously, a little bit about OTAs, the stuff that you can talk about there, which there's not a whole lot, that you should take super seriously, but it's still fun to talk about. We'll get to some of those notes. Obviously, the topic du jour is, of course, how concerned should we be about Kyle Pitts and another mysterious Kyle Pitts injury, all the, trade buzz, rumor, whatever you would call it, circling. We're going to get into that today. Yeah, that's good. We'll take that for the thumbnail. That's a good shot there, Tre'Shon. But, that's something people have asked a lot about. And, apparently I've been caping for Kyle Pitts, last week. I know you and I just feel like somehow we're like Kyle Pitts stans or something, but it's just like, no, we just think the guy like is 24 years old and could still, become like a top 10 NFL tight end, which that is actually not that hard. People are acting like that's this impossible task. And it's like, if he had like 150-yard catch, he would have been a top 10 tight end. Like if he had just had one of those bombs connect that was never thrown, he's a top 10 tight end. So not as far away as some people think. But we'll get to all that stuff today. Before we dive in to the Falcons football talk, real quick, I'm going to get you guys a word from our sponsor, BetOnline, folks. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. Baseball season is, of course, in full swing. If you want to hammer all the overs on Ronald Acuna now that he is back and apparently crushing it, you can do that. If you want to hammer the unders on the Braves season-long stuff, I also understand that, but at least you got something nice coming back to the lineup in Ronald Acuna. Obviously, NBA Finals about to kick off, NHL Stanley Cup Finals as well. So really intense times for basketball, for hockey. BetOnline, of course, has more ways than ever to stay in on the action with the latest odds, news, and scores, even live in-game betting options while the games are being played. They've also got UFC, they've got esports, and BetOnline, of course, is the best online source for all that sports wagering information as well. And in between those games, you can head on over to BetOnline's casino with all the top Vegas-style games. They've got live poker, live blackjack, live slots, and other casino games. You can check it out there when you sign up at betonline.ag. Make sure to use our promo code. It's BELIEVE, BLEAV, to get access to the latest promotions. BetOnline, the game starts here. All right, well, we're gonna tackle the Kyle Pitts discussion right away because it's just, I don't know, we were talking about it a little bit in the Falcoholic Discord today, and it's just the word that comes to mind to me is just it feels just tiresome at this point. Like the discourse on Pitts has just become so overwhelmingly negative, just in general, and to the point where like you could have a very like mild Kyle Pitts take, like I think he could get like 80-something targets, which was Ray McLeod's target share last year, which is, roughly average for a wide receiver 3. And therefore, he would then be like a top 7 tight end if he had that many targets. And people are like, that's crazy. Like he never gets open. Like there's no way he'll get that many targets. Like so I don't know what to do with that, with the discourse at this point. It seems like it's almost, just pointless ultimately. But now apparently Kyle Pitts has an undisclosed injury or not. No one's really talking about it. Raheem won't clarify it. So how concerned are you becoming, Tre'Shon, now at this point, even though we seem to be like two of the bastions of Pitt's support, but are you starting to waver at all at this point in the process?
I'm not really wavering at all. I think it's a little bit it's funny to hear these arguments that like Pitts is bad, Pitts is this, Pitts is whatever, whatever. So that means we should trade him. Do teams trade for bad players? Do teams trade for players with like no potential, no upside, no opportunity to become anything good or great? Typically, no. They usually see value in that player. So, just kind of like starting off with the whole Kyle Pitts is not XYZ, whatever. Kyle Pitts, at the end of the day, is still a very good football player with high upside. Like that's like, at the end of the day, that's what the league views him as. That's how the team views him. You don't call for players that you don't think can be meaningful contributors to your team. So for that reason, like I pretty much feel the same way about Pitts that I've always felt, which is that like there's a lot of potential sitting here. We've seen the flashes of the ceiling. If he and the team can be more consistent with his plan and with whatever it is he's doing, the sky's the limit. If not, he could fetch them, a nice draft pick, a decent day 2 pick or something like that. But I really feel like nothing has really changed. And the other thing that gives me the most confidence is Michael Penix has said, as of today on record, that he's been throwing with Pitts and that Pitts looks really good. So injury or not, Pitts has been throwing with Penix, and Penix is saying, hey, the guy looks great. I don't have any issues. Now, that could just be good company man work by Penix. He's being smart there. You're not going to go out there and say, hey, my guy looks terrible. He's hurt. But, I think for him to kind of be behind him and say, he looks good, everything else is beyond me. That's kind of how I feel about this situation. It's all beyond me at this point. But from what we've seen, it seems like Kyle Pitts is still Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, and if you look at, there's a lot of people that seem to be under the impression that the Falcons are just shopping Pitts and like they have no intention of, actually playing him this year, and they're just basically trying to glaze him, to use the current nomenclature of the people, just to like raise his trade value. But if you look at their moves at tight end, that absolutely doesn't seem to be the case, because there's nothing else there. Like there's Charlie Werner, who like Charlie Werner could be their starter, but that's a very different tight end than Kyle Pitts. It's like that's your typical just like blocking. Like Charlie Werner is kind of the typical tight end too in the NFL. Very good blocker, has good hands, but not really gonna like be able to separate or like do anything crazy. But can he run an out or run a short crosser and catch it, or be an outlet for you? Yes, he can. And he did last year a few times, but like there's nothing really else going on there. They didn't bring in anyone. Now, I know there's like excitement about Josh Simon. He is like an intriguing potential future Pitts replacement, but we're talking about a UDFA. Yeah, we're talking about a UDFA. Yeah. So like maybe next season, like if they do decide, oh, we're going to tag and trade Pitts, or we're just going to let him walk, or whatever it is they decide to do, maybe Josh Simon next season is like the answer to like, well, now this guy's we've developed him for a year. We feel really good about that. We feel like we hit on something here. And maybe the other side of the coin is like, as good as Pitts probably could be for someone who's going to feature the tight end as like a primary option in the offense, maybe he's more valuable to someone else, so that's why we're going to tag and trade him, or we trade him at the deadline, and we're fine with going to Josh Simon, who's maybe not Kyle Pitts, but can do the same sort of seam stretching, vertical stuff in our passing game, but we don't have to pay him. And, if he's only getting 2 targets, 3 targets a game, no one's really super concerned about that because he's a UDFA and not the 4th overall pick. But at this time, the expectations for Pitts are obviously through the roof given the draft stock, and everyone seems really, convinced also that, simultaneously that the Falcons like need to give him a bigger role, but also like if they're planning to give Pitts this big role, they have no one behind him at this point, like if they do trade him. So there's a disconnect somewhere here. Like there's the logical circle doesn't come back around. If you think that they've just been glazing him up to trade him, then I guess maybe you're thinking that they don't actually care about tight end at all, and they're just totally fine with Charlie Werner playing, which I guess that could be an option. But I don't know. Where do you kind of land on that? I mean, they just don't seem to have another receiving option right now, and their kind of lack of investment in the position as a whole is a little bit shocking if they really were trying hard to trade him.
Yeah, I think the Falcons' moves at tight end this offseason all to me reflect the idea that they have confidence in Pitts, and that they are going to have a need for him just kind of based on roster construction as a whole. We didn't really see them add anybody else that provides the, I think, clear out ability that Pitts does. Like, they signed Agnew, who I think is like, sure, like he's going to be, I think, impactful on special teams and stuff like that. But he's not somebody that I think teams are going to respect the same way that they felt like they had to when it came to Kyle Pitts. Because again, regardless of whatever we as fans think of Pitts, when Pitts was split out, when Pitts was asked to be the clear out guy, defenses respected his presence in that part of the field, because where Kyle Pitts showed you and has consistently showed us that he can be an above average to high level player at is when it comes to being a piece of to attack the deep third of the football field. It's where he shines. He's the only tight end that had 250-plus yard touchdowns last year. He had like almost 18 like yard per reception. Like, this is what he does. And so the Falcons, not only did they not really put anybody else in the tight end room, they didn't really bring anybody else onto the team in general that kind of has that ability. And I think we're all excited to see the leaps that this room and this group can take as a whole with Penix. But if you remove Pitts from the equation, it's going to have an effect on everybody else. Tight end is also one of the hardest positions to transition to going from college to the league. And so relying on undrafted free agent Simon in this scenario to just suddenly be tight end 2, like even if Warner is tight end 1, asking him to be tight end 2, like if you're frustrated with Pitts' blocking, if you're frustrated with the cleanness of Pitts' routes, Simon is not the answer for you, because he, like, when you look at him as a prospect, he is a lesser version of like Kyle Pitts. Now, that doesn't mean that he can't turn into something or be a really good player. Like in year 2, I think that's kind of like the vision they have, is like they brought in Simon because they feel like they're maybe going to lose Pitts no matter what after this year. That's your replacement plan. I think shoving an undrafted free agent tight end all the way up to tight end 2 doesn't make sense. Felipe Franks had 3 targets last year. 2 of them were like fourth down gadget plays, and the one that he caught was, of course, against your Atlanta Falcons in the final like game of the year. So don't really love that option in the tight end room. So Warner, like, I agree with you. Like, he can do, like, I think, what is required of him and what is asked, but he's not going to be doing anything at a high level when it comes to being a receiving tight end. And that's kind of like, it's not the biggest requirement for the tight end in this offense, but he needs to offer them a little bit more if they want to actually, again, influence the defense, feel like there's a threat that they have to worry about in the lower mid-level. Without Pitts, you don't really have that. You don't have a deep threat. You don't have any of this. So, it's just hard to picture getting rid of Kyle Pitts for a 26 pick and calling it a day. You and I were both convinced that, like, if they did move him, it would probably be pre-draft, because then that's going to affect their plans of how they attack the tight end position this year, because, again, there's nothing on the roster. So at this point, it feels like, okay, there's even less offense for them to go out and get a tight end. And, like, what if they've tried to trade future picks? Like, let's say they get rid of Pitts. Are fans going to be happy with them leveraging, more future picks and trying to acquire Michael Mayer from the Raiders? Like, that's really the only guy I can think of right now where I'm like, oh, instant plug and play upgrade. I would say he's plug and play upgrade over Pitts, because he can do all the blocking that Warner wants you to do, but he actually has real receiving ability as well from that inline position. And that's a great scenario. You're probably going to lose whatever you got for Pitts, and you might even end up paying a little extra, because the Raiders have a great 2 tight end setup. They probably feel like they don't need to move off of Mayer. So I just don't know where to go.
No, there's not really a compelling option out there. I mean, I do like Mayer, for more, if you're looking for more of a well-rounded tight end, which maybe that is eventually what they want in this offense. But for now, it's like, I think it behooves the Falcons that, like, and I think it just tracks that they're telling the truth at this point. Like, that they're not trying to trade him yet because his value's depressed. When they would be trying to trade him is if you get through camp or you get halfway through the season and, Pitts has been playing well, but he's still clearly like the number 4 option in the passing game or something like that. And you're not getting the maximum value out of him. And someone comes, at the trade deadline with like a second round pick or something like that. And it's like, okay, we want to do this now. Maybe then his value is higher, right? So you're like, oh, well, now we can get a second and maybe we can get a pick next year too. Or, maybe we can get a second and a day 3 pick or something. Whereas right now, I think you're basically negotiating around a third, and that's just not a needle moving pick for you right now. They would really love to get a second next year when they don't have a first, right? So I think that's what they're kind of eyeing at this point. But you're not going to get that right now for all the reasons we've mentioned. And just going back to what you said about Simon, it's like for how much people like dunk on Pitts for like what he's done, like Simon doing what Pitts has done thus far would be his like ceiling. Basically, like, and that's like a decent like starting level tight end. Like that's a top 15 tight end in the NFL. And people treat Pitts like he's a trash can. And it's like, yeah, I get he's not on par with Jamar Chase. Okay, we all know that. Like you can keep saying that and keep, punching yourself in the face repeatedly, just, getting angry over that pick. We all know the pick was a bad pick. Like it didn't work out, okay? Yes. It's been established, guys. What you're looking at now is how do we utilize the player and like can we actually get value out of him at all? Like he's not going to live up to a top 5 pick. Okay. What's the next step? Can he be a starting NFL tight end? Can he be a top 10 receiving tight end even if he's not the best tight end in the league? Yes, absolutely he can. He's 24 years old. Like he'll be 24 until October. Like there's plenty, like there were rookie tight ends in this class that are older than Kyle Pitts. Josh Simon's 24, I'm pretty sure. So like, I mean, it's just, I'm just saying, like it's not as crazy as people think that Pitts could actually have a strong, sort of second contract in the NFL. And tight end can be one of those positions where it's just a late blooming thing. But yes, Pitts does need to refine the aspects of his game that have become lax. But also I think people have ridiculous expectations for him where they're like, oh, he should be running these like receiver routes where he's just cutting on a dime and all that. It's like, have you seen Kyle Pitts? Like, yes, he's a great athlete, guys, but Kyle Pitts is 6'6" and almost 250 pounds. How many guys are running these like 180-pound slot receiver routes at that size? The answer is nobody ever. Like maybe like go watch Calvin Johnson and Julio and like those guys can do it better than anyone else. And Pitts is like 3 inches, maybe not other than Calvin Johnson, but Pitts is taller and heavier than both of those guys. And those were like one of one type of players. So temper your expectations for the type of routes that you want Pitts to run at this like elite level. But other than that, like, yes, he does need to get better. He does need to play with more consistent effort, and he needs to continue to hone his blocking. But I think he did take a step as a blocker last year. It's still like below average, but at least it's below average and not like this is a net negative every time he's out there blocking. So, it behooves the Falcons at this point to just play it out. And like, given that we have no information at all on this injury, not injury, whatever, we can't really speak on that. I mean, it is slightly ominous, that they're refusing to talk about it. They don't have to talk about it, so I guess they're saying we're just not going to. But at this point, I don't think they're just like shelving him for a trade because the best thing for his trade value would be to have him on the field like looking great. And that's probably what they're hoping to do this season. And like you mentioned, Tre'Shon, they need a deep threat in the middle of the field. Like they have Darnell Mooney, who was tremendous last year. I mean, way better even than expectations. But other than Mooney, they don't really have another deep threat. Like Drake London can do vertical routes, but he's not a speed threat. He's more of a, jump up and high point it type of deep threat. And he's had success there, but it's a different type of player. Pitts is really the other guy in this offense that can stretch the field vertically and open up the underneath stuff for people other than Darnell Mooney. And you do need multiple options there to be able to consistently stress out defenses. So unless they've got some other option somewhere, and given what they've brought in at wide receiver, it seems like they're not trying to bring in this like speed demon slot receiver to make that guy the field stretcher. They're trying to get these big bodied, guys they can rotate with London on the outside essentially. it seems like Pitts is going to be pretty important to this offense, and if Mooney were to miss any time, then it becomes Pitts is your deep threat. So, I think there's too much negativity about like that Pitts will never become worthy of a top 5 pick. And people are so stuck on that they can't see that, like, yes, he's not worth a top 5 pick, but that was like 4 years ago now. Like, what can he give you? Can he give you value? Can he justify his like $8 million cap hit? Yes, that $8 million cap hit is like roughly, I think the 10th highest paid tight end, something like that, on a per year sort of basis. So like, yes, absolutely. Like he could definitely hit that. He was 13th last year. And like we said at the top of the show, he catches one deep pass and he's in the top 10. Like that's how close it was. I think the top 10 tight end had like 641 yards and Pitts had like 606 yards. So we're talking about like a 40-yard pass essentially, which he did catch kind of the most of any tight end almost. So there's a pathway here for Pitts to be a good contributor for this team. And I think people need to stop making it that the only way that he can justify his spot on the roster is to be like a top 5 tight end, like caliber player, like a top 5 pick level player. And if he's not that, then he's a bum. That's just, there's, nuance is lost, obviously, in any sort of internet discourse, but we're trying to bring it back here, Tre'Shon. And I think we're doing our part to try to like at least be like, look, he can still be a good NFL player, even if he's never an elite one that you hoped he would be.
Yeah. And you know what? If this thing ends with Kyle Pitts like having another disappointing year or whatever, like them making this decision to see it through or whatever, it still has merit because of what we've seen him provide and just because of what this offense needs. And I get it, the whole issue or the whole feeling about him going number 4, this, that, and the other, but kind of like you said, like we're so far removed from that, like actually like having any meaning anymore. It really does not matter. It's simply, what is this player going to be able to provide for my team at worst? And at worst, Kyle Pitts still provides you a lot of positive impact without him needing to touch the ball. And that's like, do we wish it was more? Do we wish that we had this, the tight end that was, going for 1,000 yards as a rookie still? Sure. But we've also kind of like talked past, like Pitts never get, like I've never seen a player like not get any like injury kind of like forgiveness, because it feels like people just act like he had 1,000 yards and then he stank. And it's like, okay, are we really just going to like act like the knee injury never happened year 2? We know that it was an issue for him again in year 3. And last year was the first year that he actually looked healthy. And through the first 8 weeks of the season, he was a top 5 production tight end. Now, the season is more than 8 weeks. And I feel like, again, it's kind of like this consistency between both the player and the offense, and how they want to use him is kind of what drives fans crazy. Because if you didn't see these flashes, if you didn't see any of this, I don't think that people would care as much as they do. But it's because we know what Pitts can be. We've seen Pitts be a very good football player. We've seen him flirt with his ceiling. And it's kind of why I've always pushed back on this idea that Kyle Pitts is a bust. Because a bust is somebody that's unplayable and never flashes their ceiling. Kyle Pitts had like 3 or 4 games last year where he was the best player on offense, and he was a meaningful reason for wins in those contests. So a bust doesn't do that. Like, he's just inconsistent, and it stinks, but there's nothing that we can really do or say at this point that's going to change, I think, the outlook of everybody. It's just going to come down to whatever the team does, whatever he does this year on the field, and that's going to say it all. And, if he's a Falcon all the way through, then obviously we hope that, he's performing well and he looks good. And if he's not here for the long term, maybe they can get something out of him in a trade, maybe not. But it's just all kind of it's just a lot at this point over a tight end that, again, as badly as people want to say he stinks, he's in the headlines constantly for a reason. It's because there's people that still believe they can get something out of this guy.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, you could call it, just unbridled optimism. You can call it, glazing or whatever you want, but legitimately, like, there's not been a better fit for Kyle Pitts and in terms of quarterback than Michael Penix. Like, even Matt Ryan has a good deep ball, but he was never like the most aggressive vertical thrower. And Matt Ryan even clearly showed that, like, you just need to throw him a couple balls a game. And if he hits one, he can be a 1,000-yard receiver, right? Like, and the Falcons did a great job of that that 1 year. Penix is even more of an aggressive deep ball quarterback than Matt Ryan. So there's not been a better opportunity to actually unlock Kyle Pitts' ability in the offense with a quarterback since Matt Ryan. Like, and so there's another reason that we should maybe just see, now that we have a quarterback that is not only capable of delivering the deep ball, but is like wanting to, because Kirk Cousins used to be able to do the deep ball. As we saw, that was not really something he's able to do anymore with consistency, and kind of shied away from it as well. Penix, on the other hand, he hasn't had the fear put in him yet of things going wrong. Last year, he was completely willing to just chuck that thing up there and see what happened. And that's a perfect fit for what Kyle Pitts does. So if it's sort of like, this is it, like, we've got the pieces here, we've got him the quarterback that can actually deliver the game plan that he's probably best built for. So let's see it. Like, now we have to actually see it work. And, I think there's far too few bets being placed on Pitts having a 1,000-yard season, because now he doesn't, like, the year that he had 1,000 yards with Matt Ryan, he didn't have like 200 targets. He had 15.1 yards per reception. So, like, he can just be a deep ball tight end that's delivering big plays for you. And that could be his NFL path, not this like all around just incredible, short yardage, whatever tight end, but just this tremendous deep threat. And I think he would be definitely a worthwhile player to have on this team if he's just doing that. If he's just your primary deep threat, in the middle of the field, whereas Mooney's your primary guy on the outside. So this is a clear path for him, I think, to have a real role and a significant one, even if it's not like, again, elite player that you would think was worthy of a top 5 pick. Like, we need to move past that at this point. Like, it's just beating the dead horse, like, over and over. Like, oh, Pitts is a bust. Yes, you guys said this 2 years ago. Like, are you still saying it? Because, like, we're not getting anywhere with this discussion if you're just gonna keep, every time somebody talks about Kyle Pitts, you're like, well, he's a bust. Like, it's just, we're not really getting anywhere, guys. We need to have a more like meaningful discussion about what Pitts can actually bring to a football team, which is valuable still, even if it's not top tight end stuff. So that's all we have to say about Kyle Pitts for the next week. We'll be back next Tuesday. We'll be back next Tuesday with more take. No, but it's just, it seems like this topic comes around every so often, and we have to kind of just be like, look, there's more to the NFL than being elite. Like, there's everything between elite to like very good to average to below it. Like, there's a whole spectrum, and you're going to have guys from all of these tiers building up your NFL roster, because you need 53 of these players, and they're not all going to be elite. So you got to find a way to take advantage of players that are just specialized or just good. And Pitts can absolutely be that. So we'll see how that develops. But yeah, anything you wanted to touch on from OTAs? I know there was a fight today at OTAs. I don't remember the last time we heard about that. Apparently Bergeron and David Onyemata got into it. So, is the edge coming back to this team, Trish?
Yeah, I don't like. It's always funny when you hear there's a fight during a non-contact voluntary workout session.
Yeah, so always funny when guys are getting into fights during like a non-contact voluntary workout. I can only imagine there were some mean words said to each other. Like, maybe Bergeron was a big Grady fan. Maybe he's a cap sicko, and he's been on Over the Cap, and he's like, I noticed that we could have saved $8 million. I'm surprised you're still here today. But he could have taken some pretty mean shots. D.O. seems like the kind of guy that I would think would laugh most things off. So, like, knowing that he kind of got into it, I don't know. It's nice to see that kind of fire from your vet in the final year of his deal, because we need Onyemata to show us why he's still here at this point.
Yeah. He was probably like, "Oh, it should have been you. It should have been you that was cut." Like, and then it just really got heated there. But yeah, I mean, maybe Bergeron's a listener of the show, and he's like, "Yeah, I mean, we were expecting you to be a post-June first cut yesterday. I don't know why you're still here." Which would be very contentious. I hope we're not, getting to that level out on the practice field. But Bergeron does seem like that super heady type of guy that would be like just dropping that stat like in the middle of like a practice rep. Like, oh yeah, we got 8 million riding here. We got post June 1st designation coming, buddy.
Yeah, I think he got like a couple on Sportsman like last year, like as well. Like I know he's like always one of the guys kind of ready and scrapping like through the whistle. So it definitely fits like Bergeron's like like his personality he's kind of been that guy. He's somebody else who, like, again, I didn't think we'd be talking about the trench players at all for OTAs, but he's somebody that, a lot of people are also looking at to take a big leap. The biggest OTA news that's kind of happened is that Neuzil showed up and then he signed his deal as well while he was there. And really need Bergeron and him to kind of figure it out, because we can't go through a 9-week spell of not being able to run left again. We're gonna need to be able to do that. So kind of hoping that Matt's got that same energy and approach for the rest of this year, because it's a good start.
Yeah, I agree. It was nice to see, all of my concerns about Ryan Neuzil and the people kind of panicking about that he wasn't under contract just like went away the second he was at OTAs. It's like, oh, okay, clearly he's fine with what's going on if he's showing up. And then of course, like later that day, they basically announced, that he was going to be doing an extension instead of the RFA tag. So that's cool. And it seems, I'm interested. I don't know if we've got the actual contract details yet. I know they hadn't officially reported it last week. I'll look and see if they're there. But I'm expecting that it's one of those things where they actually like lowered his cap hit this year slightly and then gave him some guarantees next year or something like that. But we'll have to see. But it sounded like fairly reasonable overall.
It was basically just a 2x of the tender, like in terms of like total money. So I was kind of like, oh, okay. Like, I think it's like you're saying, I'm like, it sounds like they're probably just, going to sweeten the deal for him overall with the guaranteed figures and then just help themselves out some. Center is like what happened with the center market this year was very interesting to see. You saw a lot of guys that teams probably would have taken a chance on to have in the building. Like David Andrews retiring. We saw today. Ragno is retiring with the Lions at 29. So, a lot of people felt maybe that Drew Dahlman got paid, a little bit too much money, but it's kind of clear that center was a really big need. It's going to be an even bigger one next year. The Lions, though, I feel like they just kind of saw this coming a little bit. Like, it sounds like a surprise, but then you look and you see, oh, Tate Ratledge has been taking center snaps for weeks and all these other things. So, good GMs, always good GMing, always prepared. And, now that we have Neuzil back, I'm interested to see what is the plan for who is behind him, because
Matt, get ready to learn Matthew Cindric, buddy.
Oh
yeah.
We've got 2 UDFAs. We got our Louisville connection there with Ledford, and then we've got Gray, the Marquise Goodwin connection. I'll say, or Marquise Williams connection.
Shout out to Marquise Goodwin. Haven't heard that.
Shout out to Marquise Goodwin. Not forgotten. The Marquise Williams connection there with Gray. So it's going to be interesting to see. Or is it Gwynn, the man that's been in the wings for years now, and he's the guy that's going to follow up and take that step, because very nervous if the center goes down at any point this year. And it's pretty ballsy to just kind of be like, hey, we know this is your first year, Penix, but you've got this, you're going to be fine. Neuzil's got you. I do think the line not protecting a statue anymore is going to help. It still like blows my mind that Kirk Cousins had a 99.3% no scramble rate. Like, just
he was like, I'm not running. He's like, I don't care what happens. Yeah.
taking his stand, and we given Kirk a lot of flack, but honestly, the guy took a lot of shots last year. It was pretty impressive. It's no surprise that he was injured. The guy took a lot of shots last year. So a lot of respect to Kirk for hanging in the pocket. It was really not a choice. It seemed like he had to do it, but hey, good on him.
Yeah, no, exactly. Kirk, it was pretty obvious that there were going to be limitations. The week 1 game, was really an eye-opener. We're doing this, okay. And then they did scrap that immediately, but still, it's the fact that you thought this was maybe the way you wanted to open the season, looking and doing this, that is really informative, and that was really eye-opening. But yeah, Penix, actually, to his credit, not necessarily a guy that did run a lot more early in his career, never really a true dual threat or anything, but he was willing to run, and then obviously had the 2 knee injuries, but still looked like he was willing to run when it made sense. But I think that's kind of he's learned that lesson that I think a lot of these young scramblers need an injury to learn, which is you really shouldn't be running unless you're getting to the sideline or you're scoring. Otherwise, it is not worth it. And certainly knock on wood, hoping that Jaden Daniels and these guys can stay healthy, because Jaden Daniels looks like a twig, and that's always been his problem. It's this dude just takes the biggest hits and he survives, but it's man, keep that man safe. Somebody protect Jaden Daniels. But Penix has learned, I think, the lessons from that. He's ready to go. He actually avoided pressure really well, over his 3-game stretch. And the good news is that he did get to play, with Neuzil a lot when they were practicing, second team center, second team quarterback. They do have a strong connection. I'm guessing that was part of their calculus, which is maybe Penix is actually more comfortable with Neuzil than he was with Dahlman, and left-hand to left-hand connection. Underrated, part of this. I don't know if that makes a difference at all. I've never played quarterback. So, I don't know if that's something that even registers, if you're getting the left-handed or the right-handed snap. But it's nice to have Neuzil under contract. And I think they now have the option of, if Neuzil does play really well, now he's under contract next year at a very affordable sort of mid-range veteran price, as opposed to doing this RFA tender. And then if Neuzil played well, then it's now you're at the position where are you having to give him a Dahlman contract now, because now he's played great, hopefully, and then now people are gonna be lining up to sign him. It's that now you don't have to worry about that, and you have the option of sort of a much better center class in the draft coming up. All the centers that went back this season will of course be in the draft next year. So you'll have some options. You can stick with Neuzil. You can stick with Neuzil for another year and draft a guy behind him. Or you could, maybe if Neuzil doesn't play well, you could draft a center super high and maybe move on, or whatever it is you want to do. You have multiple options now. But like you said, that the depth is the main concern, and we'll see if the Falcons can convince us that any of these other guys are worthy of being a backup center that may have to play, at some point this year. Because I agree, that is by far the most concerning thing on offense at this point, is not necessarily is Ryan Neuzil capable of keeping everything afloat, which I think that he is. I'm not too concerned about him tanking the offense or anything. We saw him play 8 games. That's a strong sample size. It's fine. But if he goes down, then it's oh, now we're really in trouble. And we'll have to see. But they've got all summer to convince us. Because we're probably not going to see Neuzil play any preseason games, so we'll get a good look at some of these other guys at that point. But go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just thinking, we're talking about Kirk, obviously been a no-show for OTAs. Isn't it interesting, the names people don't care about, but they probably should? Because, we're hearing a lot of, at first people were so mad because they thought Kyle didn't show up to OTAs at all. Turns out he's just with the medical team, which is where Braylon Trice still is. That's kind of a little
concerning. Yeah, a little bit.
Still not 100%, and we've got football activities in 2 months. The other name that I am honestly shocked that nobody has especially called me out over, because I'm I'm always carrying this guy's waters. Troy Anderson. Troy Anderson has not showed up for OTAs. He's not around. We have a new DC who's linebacker focused. We've got a new linebackers coach who's considered Rutenberg one of the best in the game. No Troy here. Doesn't seem to be a lot of concern from the fans. I find that very interesting considering how concerning the linebacker position was last year. And I don't know. He's a no-show. It doesn't really seem like people have asked for too much follow-up there. That's kind of a name that I was expecting to hear and see more of during these sessions, especially during 7-on-7 and stuff like that. It's not around. And then the other name, which people always love to complain about, who's not getting any talk, is Caleb McGarry. Caleb McGarry, contract year, not here. Troy, contract year, not here. Kevin, any concern for these guys that aren't here right now? Or is it just voluntary workout? We don't need to be here. Is there anything where it's like, is Troy Anderson starting the craziest contract dispute we've ever seen?
I mean, yeah, that would certainly be something if that was the case. I'm wondering if, I don't know if we obviously don't have any details, so we can just speculate wildly. But
speculate away.
Just very irresponsibly. But yeah, with Anderson, it could be continued rehab. They didn't really mention it, and they won't unless somebody directly asks. And then we'll get the Kyle Pitts answer, which is we're not going to talk about it because they don't have to. So I think it's very possible that Anderson could be just extended rehab, or they're just not trying to rush him back. McGarry, I think, has a legitimate chance of being contract related because, again, I think that was one of the extensions that we talked about this offseason is if the Falcons feel good about what they saw from him with Penix, which was pretty good. He had 1 sack on Penix in their 3.5 games. Then I was like, yeah, they'll probably extend him because they can save a lot of money and he's still pretty young. So that, if they feel comfortable with him protecting Penix's blind side, he's a good tackle in the NFL. So maybe they'll extend him, but they haven't done it. He is entering the last year of his deal. So I think he justifiably could be like, yeah, I'm not happy about this. I'm going to skip OTAs. But again, at the end of the day, it is just OTAs. And a guy like Caleb McGarry, who has never really made a stink about anything in terms of mandatory stuff, I don't think there's any reason for concern for a holdout. Where I would start being more concerned about guys is you look at the Bucs, for example, signing Hassan Reddick, which is Hassan Reddick, that could be a good signing. There were Falcons fans that were like, yeah, we should take a chance on that. The Bucs went out and signed Hassan Reddick for $14 million, which I was like, oh, I thought we were doing a prove it deal because you didn't play well at all when you played last year after sitting out most of the season. The Bucs come out and funnel him $14 million. And that you would think that would be now Hassan Reddick is just smiling ear to ear. He's got his money that he didn't get last year. He's got a team to take a chance on him and a much better team than the Jets, and he still won't show up for OTAs. It's that I would be concerned about. It's what?
Hey,
what?
Only one shame on you.
Yeah. It's yeah, we gave you, this is a Vic Beasley situation. It's okay, here's your money. And he's thank you. And then it's hello, Hassan. And he's just gone. Yeah. So that would concern me. But yeah, McGarry, it could be contract related. We'll see. But McGarry's always kind of been that just he's not really going to talk about it publicly. So it's possible there's negotiations going on and they're trying to come to some sort of arrangement and whatever. We probably won't hear about it until the deal's done. That was what happened with Neuzil. We didn't hear a peep about a Neuzil extension until that deal was done. Troy Anderson, again, it's I don't know. That one is mildly concerning, right? But it's probably, I think it's more mildly concerning in that he may be rehabbing still, which would be concerning for a different reason than I think you were implying, but also concerning. And yeah, some of these other guys, it's Morgan Fox isn't here, but again, he's some of these
he did go up today.
Oh, okay, yeah, yeah.
Aaron reported that he this was his day. He was there.
Yeah, and it's a lot of these guys Morgan Fox, they're super veterans, and it's what are we the Falcons might have been just chill, we want to see Dorless, and we want to see Dorless, we want to see Rook, we want to see these guys getting these snaps, and if Morgan, if you're here, we're gonna want to put you on the field, so maybe just extend that vacation a couple more days and then show up for mandatory minicamp next week. So that, and again, that's sort of where we will have more concern, is if next week at this time, guys are not showing up to mandatory minicamp, then there is a large concern.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah, I don't know. It's all interesting to kind of figure it out. Like, I think about the trench guys missing, and we were talking about it earlier, but it's like, it's non-contact. I mean, what are they really? Like, 33-year-old Morgan Fox needs to be here for a non-contact. He's probably not. But, I do think it's interesting. Lions fans were just having this discussion about Frank Ragnow, and he retired. And they thought it was contract related. They thought, oh, well, he's got these years left on his deal. Caleb McGarry's a year older than Ragnow. And I don't know anything, but McGarry seems like the kind of guy that he's got enough of what he needs for his bunker, and he'd probably be pretty cool calling it a career earlier than people would expect. I don't know if he's going to want to be a Matthews kind of guy where he's doing this for 16 years. I think people – we all forget how quickly the commitment these guys are making with their bodies. Caleb is somebody that's played through injuries, dealt with them a lot. And I'm not saying he's going to surprise retire on us tomorrow just because he's not here for OTAs. This is not the point I'm trying to make. But
breaking news. Hold on. I'm putting it in the thumbnail right now.
But kind of like you were saying, we never really know what the full extent for these absences could be. It's OTAs. We really shouldn't be too concerned with anything like going on because it's voluntary. Yeah, you want everybody to be there, but it's everybody's life is different. Everybody has their own reasons. Once we get to mandatory workouts is kind of when we start putting more stock into these kinds of things. But it is always interesting to just kind of play the guessing game and wonder what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. And you've just unleashed like a full torrent of takes now from people. But yeah, I mean, McGarry always struck me as a guy that, like, it's not about a lack of love for the game. I think people always go there when we have players retire early. Yeah. And it's more like an understanding of, like, your body's already, like, taken a beating and, like, truly, like, excelling in the NFL, which Caleb McGarry is a good NFL player. You don't get there without, especially offensive line or any trench player, constant work, maintaining your body fat level, maintaining your weight. McGarry's like weight on the roster was up to like 330, I think, or something crazy. I was like,
I don't understand. He's gained about 30 pounds, and like he's holding it too.
Yeah, like this dude is like jacked. So like, if he really was like getting that level of jacked, it's like, oh, maybe he's coming back for one last ride, or maybe he's just really trying to be that contract to your guy. And like you said too, it could just be like it's non-contact, and the Falcons were sort of like, for some of these guys, like, you want to add an extra Magic Kingdom day to your, summer Disney trip post Memorial Day, go for it. We'll see you next week. Like, don't stress it too much. They want all the young guys in, and I'm sure they want as many of these new free agents in as possible. But if you're a trench player, there's just not a whole lot the veteran trench player is going to get out of these practices. And like
Ledford here, right?
Yeah.
They've been coaching with Dwayne for almost a full decade at this point. Like, he knows what he's got in somebody like Caleb.
Yeah. And the other side of the coin is like Ulbricht's scheme is a Dan Quinn defense. Like, it's just not that complicated. Like, that's kind of part of the selling point of it is like anyone, like you probably, if you've played in the last 10 years, you've probably played at least one season in that style of defense. It's so popular. It's so common. It's so straightforward. Like, these, especially like the trench guys, like the defensive linemen, it's like you're going to one gap and you're going to go and you have basically one job on this play. Like, it's just it's not overly complicated stuff. And that's part of the selling point of it, honestly. It's very different than last year where they probably needed every second to try to teach that Jimmy Lake defense. I don't even know what you call that defense, but try to teach that to everybody. The Jimmy Lake / Jay Rogers special. That may have taken more time. So again, it's like you can have mild level of concern for some of these guys, but I think by this time next week when we're hearing who's showing up to mandatory minicamp, that's when I think we'll know, should we actually be concerned, because now guys are like taking on fines essentially. We'll see, but I'm guessing like maybe one guy will be out, like that we might talk about next week, but I'm doubting it's McGarry. It just doesn't feel like his style. It's not really been what he's done. Probably not him, but I'm curious if we get like one person that's like strangely holding out or whatever, but I guess that right now would be like not that people will more or less be there, assuming they're not like rehabbing or something. Like that's different. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, any other stuff you want to touch on real quick from OTAs before we wrap up this report, and then it'll be mini camp, and then after that it'll be nothing.
OTAs is already over.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
it's crazy how fast it goes. You know, last year I think the biggest crumb of news we got out of it was that Ray McLeod is looking really good. Did we get a Ray McLeod crumb this year, or has it just kind of all been? I don't know. It feels like it's just been like Kyle Pitts news cycle. Like I really feel like we haven't heard much of anything because Pitts is just kind of dominating the airwaves. But anything notable to you that you've heard or that you feel like you saw the team mention or put out there? I think the only thing that stood out to me was that like Billy Bowman was playing with the ones at like 1 point early.
Like he rotated in, yeah.
What does that mean? Like,
yeah, I don't know.
Was it series? Like,
yeah, no. I mean, there hasn't been a whole lot. Again, like most of the rookies are not, starting, and that's just kind of the style that they're going with. It's kind of what the coaching staff has decided to do. It's very common in the NFL. And like we got a lot of Nick Nash hype from rookie mini camp, but since then there just hasn't been. Yeah, like the cycle has just been dominated by Kyle Pitts. So, there's not a whole lot to take out of it. And even if there was like notes coming out, you really shouldn't put any stock into it. Like even training camp, as much as we all love training camp and we'll report on like every detail and every catch that happens, it's still only like marginally meaningful compared to like the regular season tape that you're going to see. So, everyone, take the proper amount of couching for what you hear. It's definitely fun. This is they're really the first times we see everybody on the field together. And like next week at mandatory minicamp, that's kind of the first time you get usually like everyone within, a certain reasonable amount, assuming guys aren't still rehabbing all together. Like that's kind of the first serious camp of the whole off season. And then nothing, nothing for a month. And then training camp, which is just like all speed, full speed ahead. And it's a lot of fun.
It's going to be even worse with the new rules. I mean, like you're saying, be cautious with the amount of training camp content you consume this year because it's going to be one cut and anything is on the table.
Yeah.
So it's going to be like so much. We're going to be buried in tea leaves.
Yeah. Which is it's its own thing, and it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to cover. It's a lot of fun to consume. But just remember to have the proper amount of salt applied to your steak of training camp, delicious training camp coverage. That a lot of this stuff is just not going to pan out, or it won't pan out the way you think, or it will all be nullified by the first preseason game where Braylon Trice tears his ACL and is out for the whole season. So hopefully we don't get that type of event happening ever again. That was brutal. So it's very sad. Hopefully Trice will be able to come back for training camp. Sounds like he's on track to do that, even though he's not currently practicing. But we'll see how it develops. We will, of course, get you guys some more takes next week as we get through minicamp. And Wednesday, we'll be wrapping up our season predictions series with Eric Robinson and Adnan Ikic. We'll go through the last 10 games to give you guys our final record predictions. And by final, I mean June. Like there will be final probably season predictions in like a round table or something, closer to the season that are a little bit more meaningful, but it's a lot of fun to talk about. And it's the way to go through the schedule with a little bit more detail. So we'll be doing that. And then on Friday, we should have for you guys a deep dive into Michael Penix with JP Acosta, who just wrote a great piece for SB Nation, breaking down Pitts' film and sort of why he thinks people should be higher on Penix than they tend to be, while obviously recognizing that he does have some flaws in his game that he'll have to work on this year. So that's going to be on Friday. And we will, continue to talk all kinds of stuff. We'll be doing sort of a roster review series as we get into the dead zone after minicamp. We'll be getting into a lot of little things. We'll obviously cover any news, if we do get any trades or any craziness going on there, we'll get to that. But Tre'Shon, anything else you want to bring up today before we close out?
Nothing much. Just that I will say it's nice to have a quarterback that other people want to have conversations about and make arguments for. Big difference between the new number 9 and the old number 9. You're hearing people make the arguments from outside of the building, and that's great. That is already a step towards us showing that we have a franchise QB again. And so we just need Penix to deliver all year, and we got this.
Yeah, the levels of like hope and like hype on Michael Penix are approaching like dangerous levels, and like I'm also getting snookered in, like
You'd be so excited.
Yeah,
we got scan accounts, we got troll accounts again. We've got people who care. We've got people out there in the muck starting these fights. I'm like, real quarterback plays coming back to Atlanta.
Oh yeah, we went. It's been quite a ride. We went from the Ritter's Riders or whatever to the Penix Pumpers. So just the full
I haven't heard the word intangibles all summer, and it's great.
The leadership,
great.
That was the first thing I heard about Tyler Shuck, and I was like, "That's familiar." Saints immediately impressed by Tyler Shuck's leadership at OTA. Okay.
Would have been better if they said your leadership was questionable, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. We're going to have to go ahead and get out the funeral cart for that one. But Tre'Shon, thanks for coming on. Great summer show here, guys. He's Tre'Shon Diaz at Trey3Shon on Twitter and Tre'Shon.io on Blue Sky. I'm Kevin Knight at Falcon. Kevin, please do like and subscribe if you enjoyed today's episode. Make sure to come back and watch us live on Wednesdays. We also have a Patreon if you want to support the show, patreon.com/Falcoholic Live. Or if you're mostly a video enjoyer here on YouTube, you can subscribe to the channel memberships as well. Or instead, Patreon, more podcast stuff, channel membership, more video stuff. So whichever you prefer. And yeah, we will have lots more Falcons talk for you guys coming up as we get into minicamp next week. We'll have, hopefully, fingers crossed, working on another great guest for Wednesday, and then we will be getting, of course, into the Dead Zone coverage where we'll fill the air with lots of roster talk and other fun stuff. Sort of maybe some hype pieces on Michael Penix mixed in as well. As needed to kind of generate hype, but. Thank you guys so much for joining us on the Dirty Birds and Brews podcast. We will see you next time. And thanks again to BetOnline for sponsoring today's episode. Have a great day, folks. Thank you.